Welcome to the Masterbook Summit. I'm Narita Kendrick, and this session is about homeschooling families of all sizes. And today I have Laura with me, who is very active in our Masterbooks app. And it's a joy to have her here. And it's unique because she is an only child, also homeschooling an only child. So, Laura, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your homeschool, and then maybe from there, tell us about the flow of your day.
Okay, so hi everyone. My name's Laura Nunez. I've been with the Masterbooks community for 2 years now. My son, who is a 6-year-old little boy, just finished his kindergarten year and he will be starting first grade in the fall. So we started off with Masterbooks. He did his pre-K year. Like I said, he just finished up his kindergarten year. And I never really thought any different of it. I'm just homeschooling my son, but I guess it is pretty unique to be homeschooling an only child.
It is. So I think it would be great to start with, how do you start your day with an only child? Then we can talk a little bit more about the challenges and also the kind of advantages of having an only child.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and tell you guys what kind of a typical day is for us. So my son and I, we wake up in the morning. He actually is ready for independent play. That's his independent play time. He takes about an hour. We have a little area set up for him. He can play ball in the house, play with his toys, whatever he chooses. And during that hour, that gives me time to, prepare breakfast and take care of organizing things that we may need throughout the day. From there, him and I, we have our breakfast, which takes us about another hour. He is a little guy. Little guys take a little long to eat. But we tend to, have breakfast together, watch some baseball highlights, because that's what he's into right now. And after that hour, we tend to do our homeschooling. So just so you guys get an idea, we're looking at about maybe 11:30 a.m. So our homeschooling always takes no more than an hour. So it'll be about 11:30 a.m. to about 12:30 p.m. I like to keep it simple for him, so we tend to do about 2 subjects a day. And by that time, my husband is typically coming home. So things shift again. So if he comes home, that's when my son and him get to discuss, like what he did in schooling, what he enjoyed, what his challenges were. They get to have a little, father son time there as I go and prepare a quick meal for my husband. So then, my husband has his little meal. Brian, who is my son, gets a little time with him. And after that, since my husband does come home tired, he does go and take a bit of a nap. So we're back to Brian and me. And he spends about another 20 minutes on his own, because then it's my turn to prepare our lunch. We eat lunch ourselves, which we're looking about now to close to 3 p.m. And depending on the day, that is typically when either we're getting ready to take him to his baseball practice. If it's at the park with his team, then that's where we will be. And if not, I take it upon myself to take him outside in the yard and we play catch. Sometimes we have batting practice, little exercise here and there. And from there, um, typically my husband takes over for about an hour. So I think that is something that is actually very important and helpful. I'll bring it up a little more later in the discussion, but they get to have, one-on-one time for about an hour, which means that I get an hour to just be myself. Because, like I said, I'll bring it up a little later, but homeschooling and only presents its own challenges too. And one of those can be that mom may need, a little time to herself. It's a different type of exhaustion compared to the physical exhaustion that moms of multiples tend to experience. So from there, we typically come together as a family. We have our dinner. And depending on whether my husband goes into work the next day or not, is whether, we let him get some more rest. And then Brian and I spend some time to ourselves again. We may either watch a show or something, and our day concludes with me and him reading from his little kid Bible. So my son is a pretty fluent reader, so he's the one who reads the little story to me. And that's pretty much an average day.
Awesome. So, can you give us a little bit more of a look into the academics? How would you say that Master Books works for an only child, and how does it help you as a mom? Like a mom of multiples, because I have six, I would kind of be like, I have to plan. So, how does that work with an only child?
So with an only child, I mean, the way that Master Books is set up, which is why we love it, it is very open and go. So if for some reason you didn't get to, plan ahead, you can simply grab the book and within 5 minutes just look over it and you're set to go. Now, what makes it different with an only child is since it's written more towards the individual student, many times if your child, like mine, is already, fluent in reading, can comprehend what they're reading, they can themselves look at the assignment, pick up their book, and immediately jump into the lesson. So preparation isn't too much of an issue.
And so, as a mom, do you appreciate that too, even though you only have the one, just being able to have that open and go?
Yes, I definitely do. Because, I mean, you would think that stuff doesn't happen in life, but sometimes things do. You could start schooling with your student. Like the other day, I had my car at the mechanic. I had already started schooling with my son. I received a phone call in the middle of our schooling, which was going to require a bit of time for me to be, authorizing certain things. So I quickly just told my son the instructions. He himself was able to handle the assignment, and no one really lost any time out of it. I was able to, do what I needed in that moment, and he was able to accomplish his school. And I think that, gives a little sense of happiness and pride and joy that they're able to do it on their own.
And so, how do you celebrate some of the accomplishments with an only child? Because some of the stigma is they are everything is about them, so they can easily become narcissistic or self-centered. And so, how do you deal with some of those character issues, or even address some of those stigmas that come with an only child?
Um, I think this is my personal opinion. I think it really comes down to parenting. I mean, it's up to you how much power you want to give them. It's not a good thing to, you do have to be careful with an only child and make sure that they do understand that mom is still mom and dad is still dad. Because sometimes, since you spend so much time together, I can see where they can, try to think that, hey, my opinion, my decision on something has equal weight to my parents. But that is just where you need to take a moment and just explain to them how things are and that they're still learning. They're still the little ones.
So I love how Masterbooks has a developmentally like appropriate approach to all of like it's part of their foundation in their method. So as someone with an only child, do you feel like you have to overcompensate or add anything else in order to make it feel like their schedule's full enough? Now, granted, in the elementary years, it's going to be a lot less in high school, but how do you feel you balance his schedule out to make sure he's getting all the things, especially, the age old, what about socialization, especially with an only child? So, how have you combated that? How do you deal with that?
So, the socialization factor, that's a good thing you bring that up because when it comes to only children, I think that's mom's biggest concern always. So, socialization, my son gets it through sports. He is a bit more of an introverted child, so the two practices a week plus his games on the weekend, plus other things that we do during our day, like um, he does get a phone call from grandma every day. They FaceTime, so that all those things are socialization right there. So how does Master Books play into this? I do not feel that you need to overcompensate anything or add to it. As a matter of fact, because of the gentle lessons and the way that it is written, we are able to get through our schooling faster. You would think that that would make me think that we need to add more, but no, instead of needing to add more, it opens up our doors to do other things like focus on the sports, or if he wants to learn a specific topic, we can go into that instead. It doesn't all have to be limited to book work.
Right. And so, on the spiritual front, how do you feel like Master Books has helped equip you and your son in discipleship, which was one of your goals and why you chose Master Books? So, if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, that is the main reason why we went with Master Books. As I started off my homeschooling journey, that is exactly what I was looking for. How has it helped us? In helping set up a foundation of our Christian faith in Him. Master Books has excellent preschool curriculum. Uh, Sometimes, at least for me, it seemed very overwhelming to what you would think would be the easiest, which is to lay the foundation, seemed a bit complicated. I wanted to make sure that I got it right, especially given my background. I wasn't exactly, raised in a Christian family. So I needed that help. Master Book seemed perfect. It ties every single subject into our Christian faith. I love that, by the way. Because, it is just incredible to open up a math book, a science book, a language book, any type of subject. It all ties back to our Creator God and how He plays a part in everything.
Amen. So, do you have particular resources that are your favorites, or maybe Brian's favorite thus far?
We absolutely loved I don't think there's a specific name for this three-book series, but A is for Adam, D is for dinosaur, and N is for Noah. I think it was very wonderfully written. It conveys the whole message of our Christian faith in there at a level that, children 4, 5, 6 year old can definitely understand. It's like an overall picture.
Right. I love those too. We use those in our co-op, and we love those. So, what about some of the advantages before we talk about more challenges? What are some of the advantages of an only child in homeschooling them?
The biggest advantage, and I'm pretty sure moms of onlys will agree with me, is the one on one. The one on one. It's like your child always has a little private tutor to themselves. So it's very helpful. Also, if you see them struggling on something, you will catch it right away. So you can make adjustments into how to better teach it, what strategy to change. You'll catch those issues right away. There's no distractions. It's all just you and child, which also helps build a wonderful relationship between mom and child. I feel like it's a connection that is just unique to that specific type of homeschooling experience. But so from there, I would say things to look out for. Just that itself, the private one on one, it can sometimes lend itself to perhaps like with my little one, they may move through work faster just because one, the lessons end faster because there are no other distractions, or two, they may be catching on to material a little quicker than is typical for their age just because, you know, they have that attention.
Yes. And so, do you have any other advantages or benefits that you want to talk about, or how has being just a mom of an only child? Do you feel like you have enough community support?
So here's the thing. So yes, it is very important for moms of onlys to find a community or at least one person that can relate to them, to that unique experience. It's just me personally, I feel like I have it. Master Books is a wonderful community. That is enough for me. I never feel, any different than any other mom. I can go on there, post a question. I just know that all the moms there are very positive, supportive, and will try to help me. It's not like they're like, oh, she's a mom of an only. Um, you know.
Right.
But it is very important to find someone that can relate to you because there are, you know, different challenges, different pros that come to that unique type of homeschooling. So another one of the great things about homeschooling and only is, well, since it's only one child, you do get to, how can I say this? There is more financial resources available for you to take them on field trips. Like we love to go to the aquarium. That's a learning experience in and of itself. Um, Whereas if maybe you had multiples, that wouldn't be, really attainable. So the financial aspect is definitely something that's unique because, with one child, you are able to do more.
Right. And so, what about your family support? Have you had any challenges with them, or have they been pretty supportive with you homeschooling? And did they freak out even more because he's an only child?
So actually, my family has been very supportive from the beginning. My brother and sister-in-law are also Christian homeschoolers. So from what I hear, they were the ones that had the challenging aspect of introducing the concept of homeschooling. But by the time that it got to my husband and me, it wasn't really. All we received was support, kindness, and they already were familiar with what came along with it. The fact that we had a one child versus them having three made no difference.
Well, that's a blessing.
Yes, definitely.
So, what unique perspective do you think that you bring to the table, considering that you also are an only child for your son?
um, let's see. Well, I think that maybe I'm able to relate a bit more to possibly what my son is going through. I may not be able to relate to him in terms of the homeschooling aspect itself because I myself was public schooled all the way, but I do understand, the being at home and how to balance independent time between, that it's helpful for them to have that so that mom can get things done too. And I also understand the socialization aspect that yes, it is important to have them socialized, whether it be through sports, co-ops, youth groups, or, art classes or things like that. But I also, like you said, since I'm an only child myself, I am aware that personality plays a big role in that. So you can't, I guess I feel that a lot of moms of onlys feel this pressure that their child is not going to get socialized enough, so they immediately jump into signing up their kids for multiple activities. And many times they just tend to forget the personality. Introvert, extrovert, it makes a big difference. An introverted only may be perfectly fine with one activity outside the home. Whereas if you have an extroverted only child, you may need to sign them up for three or more, You don't want to overwhelm the child, but you also, if you have an extrovert, you don't want to, deprive them of that socialization they want.
Right. And so, how about you tell us the great advantage of your special hour that your husband gives you, and how you also foster independence in your son?
So that hour, I'm guessing you're all curious what I do. It's mostly just the time to myself, so it could be spent either reading a book, um, walking out in the yard, getting some exercise, just some fresh air. I like to, have a phone call with my mom. That's also special time right there too. Basically anything that allows me to just be me for that moment and maybe not so much mom in that 1 hour. Just
Right.
because I mean, I know we're all on 24/7, but I do feel that it does get a little more magnified when you're homeschooling and only. It literally is 24/7.
Right. And I have some friends who have kids that are only, and they feel like they're mentally on all the time because that's everything filters through the one person because there's nobody else around. So I think it was neat to hear about how you get this hour. So is this something that you asked your husband for? He offered? It was it a natural flow even before you started homeschooling?
Well, my husband is very supportive, and right now his work schedule is compatible with this because we have had periods where he just isn't home all day, you know. And when it comes to, moms of onlys that, unfortunately, maybe their husbands work all day or something, you could still find ways to get that little 30 minutes in there, here or there, you know? And it's actually good to, like you said, foster independence. So either through having them go and have some independent time on their own, or maybe it's during mealtime, set them with a little snack. And I know some people frown on it, but maybe a little show just for 30 minutes while mom regains, some time to herself.
Right. A brain break for mom.
Yes, I was unaware of this type of exhaustion because I would end the day sometimes and I'm like, well, why am I tired? Until my husband brought up the concept of mental tiredness versus physical.
Right.
And I think most families, when they think, tired, they're thinking more physical. So that's why I think it's important too for people to just acknowledge that it's like comparing apples and oranges when you're comparing a family that has an only child and a family that has multiples. So no one really has it easier. It's just different.
Right. And let's lean in a bit to those challenges. Like, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges of homeschooling an only child?
I don't even know if I would consider it a challenge, but it's just maybe once again because I'm a little biased since I was an only child myself. Maybe I don't see these things as challenges, but it's just you have to be intentional about the socialization. You have to be intentional. I would encourage people to, start socializing them like through sports or co-op or something since a young age because that's when you start building these important foundations. For example, when you hear me say that my son is in baseball, you would think that it's just, oh, well, it's one simple thing. But at his age right now, um, he learned so much. I'm very impressed. He learned how to be independent. He learned how to listen to another adult, meaning his coach. He's learning that unfortunately not all kids are nice. So you have your good kids, your not so nice kids, right? But all these things are teaching him what the world is like too, and to be a bit more aware. So even though he may not be at a place for 8 hours like other kids are, that 1 hour each meeting is enough for those important lessons.
And so, one of the things we had talked about in the past is that when you have an only child and you kind of come into conversation, some people may dismiss it who have many because they feel like, oh, well, you have it so easy. So, could you maybe talk into that a little bit? Like, is it true that you got it so easy, you can't possibly relate? Or do you think it's still a connection, parent to parent, the homeschooling friction? Like, can you talk a little bit more about that kind of challenge or discouragement that, only parents may feel?
Um, I think it depends mainly on the community. You want to surround yourself with a community that's very welcoming. Like I said, thank God that I found the Masterbooks community. I've never had to deal with that issue, but I am aware of other moms of onlys that do feel that. So, my advice would be to try to find someone that is also homeschooling and only. Like, we are out there. It's not like we're some unique, isolated person. No, there's many moms of onlys out there homeschooling. It just goes back to the whole apples and oranges. It's different. While we can all relate that we're all homeschooling our children and we chose to homeschool them for, our reasons, I don't think anyone should really be judging anyone else. Like moms of multiples have their challenges. I'm aware of that. And moms of onlys have their own challenges too. It's just different. We should all, be more tolerant of one another. But we do have to be careful not to, put too much pressure on our own selves. I
Right.
mean, we're going to try our best. And with God's help, we will, do our best. But it's important not to put too much pressure on ourselves or too much pressure on our kids, too.
That's right. And so, in closing, I think it would be really neat and helpful for a moms of only when you said, there is no do overs. This is really all we have. How do you narrow down curriculum when there's like so many great choices, but you only have one child to like, you have to slim down the choices because you only have one child to teach. So, how would you prioritize how you pick and choose what will be done in each year?
Okay, I'll answer that right now. In each year, you said, or just
Yeah, or like
comparing
for
to?
the new year. Yeah.
Um, well, it can get challenging, especially when there are wonderful courses out there. I know this for a fact. For example, when it comes to the science options, it can get challenging. But ultimately, just I would say, especially with moms of onlys, involve your child in the process, see what topic they're more interested in, perhaps, and try to have that help you narrow down the choices. Now, as a mom, how would you narrow down choices from one curriculum to another? I think it ultimately comes down to your why you decided to homeschool. In our case, it was mainly for the Christian faith. So that limits us to certain curriculum already. And then from there, especially when it comes to moms of onlys, take a look at the curriculum. Some curriculum like master books works really well for moms of onlys, whereas I know that I've glanced over at other curriculum and they're just made for large groups of 30 or more, or moms of multiples. And well, yeah, someone might tell you, well, you can adapt it to working with one child. Not necessarily.
Right. And with only having such limited mental space as mom and a mom of only, you like the open and go. It's all planned for you. You've got options and a path that leads from kindergarten to 12th grade. So I could see why Master Books is your top choice because it just takes away all of those friction points and you get the discipleship, the relationship, the worldview, the apologetics woven into it. So it's neat to hear it from a perspective of an only, that you still have choices to make. And it's true, let's talk science and God's designs are very hard to choose from.
Definitely.
So it's like, and I love how you said it, like, because our goal is the Christian faith and a biblical worldview, that narrows you down so much.
Significantly, yes, definitely.
So, well, is there anything else you'd like to say in closing as a word of encouragement or a scripture or anything like that for moms of only? And anything that you have, any advice that you would have for them?
So don't be afraid of homeschooling an only child. It's truly a wonderful experience, and it will allow your relationship with your child to grow. It's truly a gift. Don't be fooled into thinking that homeschooling is only for, large families gathered around the table. There's plenty of homeschooling moms of onlys out there. So it's a matter of finding a community or here and there. But the truth is, we're out there. So don't be afraid. With God's help, um, there is no one better prepared to homeschool your child than yourself.
Amen to that. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Laura, for being with us and speaking on what it's like to homeschool with an only child.
Thank you for having me.
Today I have Brooke Wayne with me. She is a co-author with her husband Israel Wayne on a couple of the Master Books books like Pitching a Fit and Raising Them Up, both excellent resources for parenting. And it is my delight to have her here with us today to talk about homeschooling as a large family and how she does it and keeps it all together. Hello, Brooke. Thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you,
tell us?
Narita. This is a great thing to get together and talk about.
I know, I love it. I'm so excited to talk to you about this because I talked to Laura, who only has an only, and then to talk to you, who have 11, and I only have six. So this is a great medium of being able to discuss and get a peek into how you do it because I feel like I can glean so much, even 17 years in, two kids graduated. So I'm very excited to speak with you today. Can you tell us a little bit more about your family and your background a bit?
Right, yes. So we have 11 children, 9 are still at home, and we actually are new grandparents now. So we're really excited because it's fun seeing that next generation go on and dedicate to homeschooling and start having children. So we have in our home children ages 4 through 23, and 2 are graduating next month. So we're going to have by next year just 5 homeschool students. And I tell you what, it's been a fluctuation between usually 7, 8, 9 at the very peak homeschool students for us. So going to 5 feels like, wow, this is going to be a new era for us as well. So interestingly, myself and my husband were both homeschooled growing up and graduated as homeschoolers. So homeschooling is very much a way of life for us, and we are just so thrilled to be able to pass it on to our children with a discipleship mindset.
Can you touch a little bit more on the discipleship mindset? I feel like sometimes in this new generation of homeschoolers, they miss that aspect. So, could we
Yes,
just maybe start at that foundation? What is
sure.
biblical discipleship homeschooling?
Sure. I think a lot of it goes to the fact that C.S. Lewis had a famous quote that there's no neutrality in the universe. You are either are for the Lord or against. And he had different words for it. I'm paraphrasing. But that kind of comes to the core of what we feel about homeschooling. It's not just neutral facts that we're imparting to our children. And during the modern era, that was kind of the goal, was just you don't have you have this impartial journalism mindset towards how you taught your children math, or how you taught them their language arts, how you taught them science. It's just data, a data download. And yet, we all know that there's, especially in our current culture, there's so much agenda. There's an influence. There's a way that is viewed, or even for our children, a way that they will use the skills that they have academically, and we want to capture those moments and teach them a biblical perspective, like putting on a biblical lens where they see all the world through a scriptural point of their service to God and their service to others. So in math, that tends to be the one that's hardest to grasp in this area. And this is something I think Master Books does an excellent job in capturing that biblical perspective, even through the math lessons. But it's looking to math in the orderliness around us that we see in the world reflects something about who God is. It reflects his order. It reflects the consistency of his nature. And those are things we want to impart to our children. But also, they need to realize in learning how to do math well, they use it as a service to others through business, through homemaking, through any kind of service opportunity. There's going to be ways that they utilize what they have learned and do it in a biblical way, do it in a loving way towards others. So that's our goal in trying to teach our children in a biblical perspective. All that to say, though, too, there's the whole package of the lifestyle choices and values that are being promoted in the government schools today. And we want to capture back some time for innocence in our children's lives, for being able to instruct them in what the Bible says, and filter through our whole day that mindset of growing in the Lord and not just growing in academics.
Amen. Amen. So, could you give us a peek of what your day does look like? And then maybe we can go into how you use master books in your large family setting.
Sure. So there's always ideal, where I love planning and it's all like charted out half hour by half hour and so forth. And then there's reality, right? And for the last couple years, our life has been a little unusual with some illness that we're thankfully getting through, some Lyme disease, and a change in our home and so forth, moving. So I will say some of this is a little bit flex from many years, but our goal is always to have Bible time in our day. And so because of my husband's work schedule, it just works better for our family to do that first thing in the day. And so we've done many, many different things, from reading one chapter of the Bibles every day out loud together, or and then, commentary, some songs thrown in, some Bible memorization, to reading different books or sermons and so forth. One of the ones we did was that 10-minute Bible journey, and we didn't spread it out over a year. There's 52 lessons in that, but we just read it, uh, like every few days we would read one of those. And that was really good because it gave our children a big overview of the Bible. So that's our first part. Ideally, it should start at 8:15. Sometimes breakfast gets in the way or so forth. So it's a little bit give and take. And as our children have gotten older, we've extended that time so it usually lasts at least 45 minutes. Sometimes the whiteboard comes out and we're getting off tangent trying to talk about something that was related or something that we picked up in that lesson through the Bible time. And we'll get into some more academic things right then and there. For the most part, I've had different ages, and so this is my tricky point of knowing what do I do first. And so I usually try when we're all together during that Bible time to shift into anything I'm going to do as a group study. So for a couple lessons, I have things that I can do as a big time group study, usually history being one of those. And I'll try to do it, whoever's in that class range. I have my children broken up into groups of 3 typically. So if it's something my high schoolers can join in, we'll do it together. And right now I'm focusing on it will be elementary, upper elementary, and now a high school student in there will be my next set. And history is usually what I start with. If there's anything like I can talk about and read out loud together, I do that because otherwise I find it so hard to go get them individually and pull them back. If we're already there, it's better. So I'll usually do the history and science, which I always try to couple up as many kids as I can into that group and do that with them. Then, when I need to turn my attention to some of the more individual things, such as reading or math, I do that even if I can break them up a little bit into groups still, I'll do that. Most of the time, it's very individualized to that child in that grade level. And so I'll have everybody do, say, math next. And my mom always liked to do math first because she said it's a brainy subject. You get it done first thing, and it's like you got it off your checklist. So, I do try to do that early on, even though it looks different for us. But I do, so I'll work with one while another one is working independently and then just rotate through that. I used to try to be available for questions and say, okay, they can just come over and bring up their book and say, I don't get this. I have found the older I get, the less my brain works in that capacity. So anymore, it looks a little more like work with one at a time. And this is the beauty of where I see master books helps a large family because it's a very much of a open and go curriculum. I am not having to ingest into my brain as a teacher all the information and then hand it out through a lesson before my child can get to, say, the math problems. And I find, for the most part, all of my children can just open up the book. They know where they are because it's just simply laid out with here's the next page and find what they need to do next, read the instructions, simple enough, and get busy working on their next project their next day. So that has been just phenomenal. I've always had an idea in my brain that by seventh or eighth grade, I want my children to be fairly good at just that independent study. But in the elementary years, there's just learning that kind of thing. They're learning how to figure out where to go with each subject and all that. So I work a lot with my elementary grade kiddos to figure out what to do next. So usually after that comes language arts if lunch isn't happening next. And then again at lunchtime, it's a great time when everybody's mouth is full to read aloud, usually history. And that's a big one for us is just getting a little more in those days. So if I have different days scheduled out, I'll do something with my high schoolers as well. Usually something more in the worldview or even their history with them together. The sciences have been harder at that high school level to do together. We did do biology last year with 3 of them, so that was helpful. I just thought I need to save on all of the but labs and all that, so I'm just going to have them do it all together and all take note of those labs together. But anyways, worldviews and conflict for master books has been a favorite of ours. That one we have done separately, but a couple times we've pulled it out and read together. And those types of things, the history and the worldview perspective, the apologetics, or say Jason Lyle has the logic program. We like to do those together because part of the beauty of homeschooling is the conversations that come. And I really want to capture those times with my kiddos to be able to have, a little bit of back and forth and what are you getting out of this? Or as we're reading it aloud together, to be able to just input and say, here's what I thought about this chapter, and just to be able to share in that experience together. That for me is one of the best things about homeschooling is that camaraderie or that relationship building time that you get together.
Um,
Right.
so could you give us a peek into how do you plan for so like your year plan? How do you decide what courses? And I have to ask because I know so many want to know, how do you handle grading for that many children and your transcripts?
Okay. So, how we choose what to do, basically you can just look at, okay, we've got math, the core subjects, the four core math, language arts, and then history, science. So I start with those. And depending on the year, usually add in 2 to 3 electives, usually as a coursework. And then for us, we have something like Bible quizzing or something extra outside of the home as well. And so those are fairly easy as far as we use master books primarily. And so those are very easy for me to choose within master books. I have sometimes my favorites that I've used for each child, but then I come out master books will come out with something new. And okay, well maybe I need to try that for this child because I think that will fit their personality better and so forth. So I love being able to just look over everything and take a peek and think what's best for each child in this year. So I was just doing this with my 13-year-old as she's coming up on high school. I can't believe that. And this last year she did the Elements of Faith. Still has a couple pages left on that. And for me, let me just jump in and say something about that. I love that book because it helps a child to understand what elements are and the basis for it. It goes, just piece by piece of each element and discusses them, has biblical verses in there for the child to consider. But see, chemistry was really hard for me as a high school student. And so I'm like, this is prep. If I had had prep, I think it would have been easier for me to do chemistry. So my daughter was doing the chemistry one. Sorry, she was doing the Elements of Faith book last year, and she was doing I'm sorry, I can't think of the right term all of a sudden. It's applied engineering. It has the Ray Comfort book about heaven, created in heaven, I think it's called. Anyhow, she's been going through those. So we were looking into now, what do we do for high school? And looking at general science, and just it was fun to talk with her and get a feel for what she would like to do. So of course, choosing then, okay, so that's the science we want to do, but we were looking at anatomy in the high school years is another course she really wants to do. So I'm trying to get a little bit of feedback from my older children, find out where their interests tending, because she had done the Living Healthy book in the elementary years and really loved that. So I was like, anatomy is probably going to be just the ticket. So choosing then for her the language arts, she's in the language arts 9, which of course pairs with Pilgrim's Progress. And that was like a no-brainer, like, oh, I have always loved Pilgrim's Progress. So that was just so fun to be able to introduce her to that and get her started on that, even though it's a little early for that yet, grade wise. And she's doing great with that. So those were easy ones. The logic one is one I want to cycle back to. We've done it with our older kids. I want to cycle back to that with our younger set now. And let me think of what else she was doing. Uh, we love the Jensen's program as well. So I'm going to start her on vocabulary this year as well. So there I'm pairing up 2 language arts types of things, but the vocabulary I found can be done just in a very short 15-minute little lesson. Anyhow, I'm getting too detailed, but the big picture is just creating a chart where you have the basics down for each child and then knowing what's the capacity for doing something more. You're always going to have a child who needs more one-on-one. And with those children, just going over the basics seems to be the right way to go. Those 4 basic subjects. If we go too much beyond that and we're adding in so many electives and Bible groups and church groups and family events, pretty soon it becomes overwhelming. So for our family, just keeping it simple with not too many extras, not too many extra outside interests and groups and clubs and all that has been a lifesaver, just to make sure that we're being able to get through our work in the day, have family time. That's been super important for us. Um, I do like to, if we're lagging behind on some lesson, we will utilize some evening time. For my little ones, it used to be math because the math, it's just so many pages in that math book sometimes. So I would say you have to do one page or 15 minutes. You always have the slackers who go 15 minutes on one lesson, or sorry, one problem out of the page. And that was always challenging. But basically, that helped us move forward just a little bit without making a big deal in the evening for having homework, say. So that's been just amazing for us. And Narita, could you just remind me what was that second part of the question?
Yeah, the grading and transcript part.
Oh, grading. Good grief. Isn't grading hard? I'm not perfect at this. And so I will say what I have done with my high schoolers. Let me start with them. My high schoolers, what I do is I know there's a couple things that they probably are doing just fine in. I will say you need to grade yourself. Now, I'll still keep the questions, the answers. You know how you can just tear them out of the back of the book. I keep them in my own binder, but on that weekly basis or sooner too, I'll have them grade themselves on certain things. And I require them to use a red pen because I say my old eyes need to be able to see it very quickly. And of course, they're not happy. They want it to look neat and tidy without the red pen in there, Mom. But I have them do that for me. And then I have, ideally, a once a week check in with each child to see where they're at and to check over that. You know how to sometimes you go, okay, these answers are all just exactly like the back of the book. Then I need to figure out a way to change this up. You start just be noticing if there's any sneaking going on, so that you make sure you curb that before it's through the whole book or something. But ideally, you're going to be having conversations on this very frequent basis to get a little feedback. So that's how I keep up with those guys. For the ones that I need to check, say, typically it'll be the math and the language arts that I'll feel like, no, I need to uh, keep checking on each of those details. Then I will go through that sometimes with them and have them call out to me what's their answer in their book. And then I'll check the answer just to keep it going and keep it going quickly. Once in a while, I've hired out my older kids to check on the younger kids' work, just a couple pages or something at a time, not to wear them out, but just to help me keep going on that. And with the way it's laid out, I think they've been able to keep up with that pretty easily. So then for my younger set, it's a little more answer by answer, unless I'm doing it with them and I can check over the whole page right then and there. So for math, it tends to be that we just are doing it together. So never works perfectly in our home, but it keeps it rolling along and it keeps everybody me knowing before they've gone too many lessons or too many weeks before I go, oh, I see that there's a problem. They're not getting this. And of course, for the young people, I need to pull them in and say, let's do this lesson over together so that I can help explain it and help keep you on target. Again, I say like at that 7th through 8th grade is for me that tipping point where I'll say to them, go ahead and you start your independent studies, do it on your own, and then let me know at the end of the day how that, what's going on. So I can see what you've done through the day. And our home is such that I never have them too far off. It's not like they're off doing something else. I know they're digging in their books and they're coming back to their bin to get the next book. Anyways, on to transcripts. My family has done this where I've just created one and I have just made a mock-up from something I saw online where I'll have all the major points taken. So you've got the language arts, you've got the math, history, and science, those 4 major blocks again, broken up. And then I list in there the title of the book. I'll often put the publisher too. And then I'll put the credit amount and then the grade. Now for grading, this comes to bit by bit adding up in your workbook. to get a percentage, and that percentage is what's needed for there. And then you can figure out, does that get, do you want to go with a point system, or do you want to go with a letter such as A plus or so forth? And so we've done it that way, and then put the electives at the bottom. And I love that Master Books includes right in there, here is what credit should be assigned for this work. I have looked up, at least in our state, it is typically in the realm of 180 hours of coursework is needed for one credit. And so that's where, when we have maybe a time where a child does something else beyond just their core work, I can easily look at, okay, that took roughly these many hours, this much time, or 30 minutes a day spread out over the whole 9 months. Okay, that gives me a range to know how much of a credit to put with that. Because honestly, as homeschoolers, our lives are going to be very flexible, taking advantage of new opportunities that come along our way, various learning opportunities. Hopefully, as our older ones get older, there's a little bit of a work ability as well. And so compiling that into a transcript can be super hard. Usually, driver's ed can be allowed for as a half credit. So that's kind of like one of those other things of life skills that hopefully we're not only teaching our children, but looking for ways to utilize as well in the homeschool area.
And
It
just
is.
to know that the Lord used you as a vessel to pour in those seeds of truth, and then you launch them out to see what God does in their life. It's just a beautiful thing to see God and his glory amplified in his life, in their
Mhm.
lives. I did want to ask like a couple questions in closing, and that is, how do you keep a check spiritually and emotionally on your kids when you have so many?
Hmm. I think because we spend so much time in Bible time in the morning, that really helps a lot. Just because you can notice, like, if a child's avoiding the questions or not engaging, and of course, as a parent, you're sometimes like, well, now what do I do about that? Prayer, of course, is the first thing that comes to mind, of just always bearing before the Lord our children and their spiritual needs, knowing that's where it's really at. So I would say just those family conversations are so essential. And I know for a lot of families that can be like, well, we've never done this. It's hard to implement. Yeah, it's hard to implement. It's hard to get the little ones to pay attention. And sometimes it's hard to get the big ones to pay attention. And yet, I just think it's so essential. And just gaining to, share with them our hearts as well, because they see us as parents, and you can put on a front before the whole world, and yet your children see every imperfection and they see the real life that happens. And so in humility, just being able to come before your family too, and be able to say, here's where we've gone wrong, or here is a bad attitude I had, I see what's wrong, and I want to change my ways. And be able to have that kind of honesty really helps them be engaged. And then, there's times where they're going to have hard lessons that they need to learn, and we'll be like, we could have saved them, or we would have tried if we could have, to just said a little word. And I'd say, take every opportunity you can to invest in your children and be able to say the hard things at times, but also temper it with a whole lot of love and care for them, that they know you care about them personally. When I talk about in our book, Pitching a Fit, I like to, when I have that difficult conversation with a child, when I need to correct them, to put my arm around them. And I do understand not every child at every time is going to even appreciate that. But if a child's receptive to that, around them, and it's a message for them that I am for you. It's a message to myself to remind myself that I am for them in this season too. But I want to always let my children know I am for you making it, for I am you, for you surrendering to the Lord. I am for you having good relationships in your life. And so the content of what I might share is going to be different based on the situation, of course. But that's my heart goal as I share things with the Lord, as I share correction with them, that they understand I'm for them. And that takes some time, sometimes with different children, to really grasp. But I do it a lot of times, even through email. So for my older children who have an email, I find, going back to that one-on-one time, and how do you invest in each one individually? Email is amazing because a lot of times in the busyness of the day, there's things you're like, I want to say something to that. I want to address that. I want to share something that, good article I read, but it's also, it just goes so fast, right? And there's chitter chatter and there's noise and there's a sink running and all that. And so if I can take a few minutes sometimes to just put my thoughts, it goes a long ways towards my collecting my thoughts and really being able to address something in the spirit in which I want to. Again, you kind of have to realize every relationship is its own dynamic, and that may or may not fit with each child. But I like to utilize that, or sometimes a phone call if it's like I'm on a trip or something and I need to talk to one child in particular. So those are ways we try to do that. I love going out for coffee with my girls sometimes. Don't do it often enough, but that's another way just to get, schedule. We make appointments to go to the dentist, and we usually get there somehow. We drop everything, we get to the dentist. And so I'm realizing sometimes I need to take more appointments with my children. It sounds very formal, but just especially those older ones that they have their own schedule going, and I need to make some sort of connection time. And just hugging our children, of course. I heard somebody say once that you should never be the one to let go of the hug because you never know how long of a hug that child needs. Of course, I'm like, well, some of my kids don't really appreciate long hugs, but it's made me pause a little bit longer and just pray a quick prayer for them as I give them a hug. I love too just taking time for family time at our dinner table. And it's a good time if there's a conversation that is more available for everybody to join in. Just zero in and say, I saw that you were doing this today. What did you enjoy about it? I saw that you were building a fort. What made you, what's the name of the fort? What's your plan with it? And just to draw out each one as best as you can. My midwife had a beautiful statement for me one time when I don't remember which child it was, but I was, in the emotional stage of just having a baby. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know how to keep up with each one. I'm so overwhelmed right now and feeling like I the one-on-one time, if I took an hour per child per day, I would get nothing else done. And she just smiled and said, here's how she did it. She had 13 children. Here's how she did it. She just took time as much as she could, smile in their eyes and show them that she saw them and hug them and do her best to speak with each one and to invest in each one. And she would get to bed and feel like, oh, I missed this one or I missed that one. She said she would wake up without a child on her mind, that couple children, and she would go and find those ones out to be the first to invest in. I loved that because it took off the pressure of, I don't know, it took off the pressure that somehow someone else could do this and be perfect at it. And to just realize you feel the Holy Spirit tapping you and saying, did you meet this one's needs today? And you go, okay, well, tomorrow I will wake up and I will go and I'll invest in that one. And just let them know I'm here for you. And of course, some conversations take a long time. And I always say, have a back plan of something in the freezer for dinner, have a back plan of we'll do an evening session of grammar tonight, or maybe we'll double up some lessons tomorrow. But I do find within reason having a little bit of flex room, which we have with our homeschools, to really delve into the person, to delve into the character issues, to delve into where do we need to share the gospel in this day. That is so valuable. And again, the beauty of, I feel, master books is you can pick up right in the middle of the lesson if you have to. But taking the time, for what tends to be sometimes the correction parts and the discipleship parts, that part is so essential. The academics usually come easier when the character issues are in place. And so for me, I will always say, I'm not going to sacrifice the character issues in order to just stick with the lesson because, frankly, it doesn't go well. But I will take time and pause and catch up later if I have to with the academics.
Thank you so much, Brooke, for being here with us today. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I hope you were richly encouraged by Brooke. If you'd like to know more about Brooke and her husband, please check out Raising Them Up and Pitching a Fit. And there's curriculum like Foundations in Faith that are also available, and other books. Two of my favorites are questions Jesus asked and questions that God asks, all available at masterbooks.com. Thank you so much again, Brooke. I hope everyone has been enjoying the summit, and we look forward to seeing you again.